Brendan, right now, if you were to go out there and ask Malaysian football fans to describe Brendan Gunn as a player, do you have a rough idea of how people would describe you?
I think I have a rough idea because I think that's how I look at myself. It's just, I almost, we spoke about Darren before, and I almost say that we are very similar in we give our all, 100% in everything, no matter what badge we are wearing. And I think we just truly love football. I think that's what it is. And I just love being out there. I love helping my teammates. I truly know it's a team sport. It's not an individual sport. I'm not the type of player that's going to do 17 step overs and put a top corner, but I'm that person that's going to kick that person that does 17 step overs and get the ball and give it to one of our players. I think it's just the fact that I guess I want to be known as the person that gives everything. And obviously I know I can't play amazing every game, but I'm always going to give an amazing effort every game. And, I think that's something that I hopefully can give to some of the younger players coming up, is that this generation that is coming up needs to have that character, needs to have that heart, needs to have that want before they can then show off what their talent is.
The reason I say this, Brendan, and I was speaking about it to Faiz as well. I was telling him 2018, the Malaysia Cup final. In retrospect, now we know that you were also battling dengue fever in the middle of that Malaysia Cup final. But that's already astonishing enough. That's wild enough. But in that game, and I remember that was like a major cup final for you after battling 2 ACL injuries. And that was probably one of your best seasons as a footballer as well. And in that Malaysia Cup final, I remember at the end of the first half, towards the end, the Perak goalkeeper makes a mistake. Terengganu get their second goal. Every Perak player's heads is just down, including the goalkeeper. Understandably, right? 2-0 down before halftime. In a cup final, not the most ideal situations. And I'll say that as a guy that was on the stands, I'll tell you that the fans had their heads down too. Everyone went quiet. But then we looked up and you were the only guy who was going around to everyone and urging everyone to look up and stand up and not feel discouraged by what had just happened. And I couldn't help but think that the one thing that probably separated you from a lot of those guys is that for a lot of them, that night, going through whatever they did, must have been one of the most painful things ever at that point. But for you had already dealt with 2 insane ACL injuries, that being 2-0 down at halftime in a cup final is absolutely nothing. That you can bounce back out of that. Tell me, what exactly do you think the ACL injuries just made you into a completely better player mentally?
Yeah, now that you say that, I didn't even obviously think about that at the time. But I guess there is some sort of roll-on effect of what I had been through. But I just remember at that time, we weren't playing bad. It was just, one of the balls, I think, went off, Mount Everest and then over Hazel's his foot, and and then another one was a pass back. So it was just simple errors that I didn't think were worthy of us being behind 2-0 at that stage. So for me, every time I step onto the field, I never want to leave the field with regrets. And I could have easily just put my head down as well and just continued on playing and what will be. But in my mind, it was more, we weren't playing bad. So why don't we just keep pressing as hard as we can, keep pushing as hard as we can? We've got a lot of time left. They scored very early, two goals. So it was more the fact that we hadn't been playing bad, which was what spurred me on and really got the boys going. And because I'd been playing with those boys for a long time, I knew what they had deep down inside. I knew what they could offer. They were such good players. It was such a good team that I knew that if we just had a little bit of energy, if we had a little bit of character, we could easily pull this back. And that was one of the aspects that Mehmet brought to that team, and it was always giving our all, no matter what the result was going to be. Give your all, have no regrets, and that really stuck with me in my head, and that was one thing that I was really thinking about at that particular time when that ball did go in the net.
Yeah, I mean, you said that you seen yourself as an athlete who always gives it all, and now we've heard this story from the Malaysian Cup final night, right? So you are this a high performing athlete that always pushes for more, that always want more. You know, we can always see as a fan your transformation from from your Sabah days, from to Kelantan and now to Selangor. You have achieved this footballer level in Malaysia that very few achieved before. But I mean, where does this come from? Have you always been like this from the beginning? Was it the way you have been brought up? You know, what makes you, what makes Brendan Gunn this version of Brendan
Yeah,
Gunn?
and I just want to add on to whatever Faiz say. What makes you this way? And I also wonder if Australia has played any role in this, because the other thing that I was talking about with Faiz is it's astonishing how Australia is just elite in every sport that I can think of. From individual sports to team sports to some of the weirdest sports out there. There's Australia right there, always in the mix. And I'm wondering if stuff like that played a fundamental role in shaping this character that Faiz mentioned that you've built within you.
I mean, did you take it from somebody? You know?
No, yeah, it definitely has come from childhood. I was always really small when I was a little kid, and I know that this story has gone around many athletes and all, but I was always the little guy who just runs around all the time, and I guess it was that which spurred me on, because I used to never make teams. I used to never make elite teams
Because of your size?
because of size and because of obviously probably ability to such, because at that time these guys were huge that I was playing against, who were physically stronger, you know, who could hold the ball off a lot easier than I could, and I think those aspects of having those failures have really built me, and my dad always pushed me to keep going, because if he didn't push me, I probably wouldn't have been a footballer in the end. So he kept pushing me to go and try out for all these teams and whatnot, and eventually, you know, you find a coach, or you find that one person that believes in you, and you suck that belief out of them, and you use it for yourself. And I think that's what has built what I've done now. You know, when I first came to Malaysia, I wasn't the greatest of players in terms of, you know, skill and whatnot. But again, I had that mentality of just work hard and then see what happens from there. And I think that's carried throughout my whole career. And I think that's the one aspect that has really separated me from a lot of players. And obviously there are a lot more players coming into that role now. But back then, it was the thing that did really separate me in a kind of like a never give up attitude, and I guess it does come from the Australian roots, because I used to play every sport, as you say. You know, I played every sport. Honestly, my parents just put me into every
Australians,
sport.
man, Australians.
And it was amazing to be in every sport, because you learn so much out of all these different sports, and you know, football was the one sport where I truly thought that, not that I could go somewhere, but I truly enjoyed the most, which allowed me to give my all for it.
I also want to touch a little bit about post those two ACL injuries. Winning the Malaysia Cup was probably the highest point of your career, right? Like, in terms of the emotions, in terms of everything that went into it, the significance of that trophy. I remember your family members being there as well, which would have been pretty sweet. Your close friend Robbie was even there as well at the stadium. Almost left the stadium, mind you. I remember that story. He almost left the stadium before the last minute goal. But it must have been an incredible moment. But then there were also the national team nights, which, as a fan, 2018, 2019, gave
Wonderful
us some of
times.
the most incredible nights we have ever experienced as Malaysian national team fans. But out of those 2 years and all the incredible games that you played in, from the Suzuki Cup to the World Cup qualifiers, what was your personal favorite? Because I have mine, and I'm going to tell it in a while.
Yeah.
But what
I
was
have
your
mine.
personal favorite?
What's yours, Brandon?
Well, I don't know if this is the same as yours, but it was obviously that Thailand game for me was my favorite. But it wasn't because of the game. It wasn't because of what happened that night. It was because I had left my wife who'd just given birth to my son 2 days after she'd given birth, and I flew to Malaysia to play in these qualifying games, and I think that was the best part about everything. It was to not only what happened in the game, it was just to sort of come full circle and get on the phone to my wife and say, this is a reason why. I always search for the why, and I always search for an answer. And I just said to my wife, this is why. This is exactly why.
Your kid. He was
That
he was such
that
a
is
yeah. I can completely understand that, Brendan. That night, I'm sure Faiz will have his stuff to say as well.
I do.
That night was probably one of my favorite nights ever as a Malaysian fan. Obviously, there was that game against UAE, which we should have won. I still insist we should have won. But that game against Thailand, a lot of people will remember that assist. Even just prior to this interview, we were speaking to some of your Selangor people here, and one of them mentioned that pass that you made for Sumare to score against Thailand. And I make no mistakes, everybody remembers that because it's such an iconic, it's such a nifty pass. That in the moment was such an incredible thing to watch, right? It almost like it happened in slow motion. But what a lot of people forget is that prior to that assist, 30 to 40 seconds prior to that, there was a tracking back run that you made. Almost half the pitch you ran when Thailand were trying to launch a counter attack. There was a tracking back run, and you had a sliding tackle to reclaim possession, and you distributed the ball to the left.
Spread it to the
You
left.
to the left, and you raced all the way back to the penalty box to be able to receive that ball and play that pass to Sumare. To me, that was my favorite moment from that 2 years of watching Malaysia.
call it
Because
elite stuff,
it's
bro.
that-
Elite
no,
stuff.
No, exactly. Because that kind of grit, that kind of determination is something we barely or rarely
You don't
rather
see really
saw in
often,
the
yeah.
national team. And you just had something different in you in that particular fixture.
Yeah, it was as I say, that was the why. You know, my kid really gave me that extra bit of energy, extra bit of grit, as you say. But again, you know, I'm not that player that's going to do those step overs and do all those things that, you know, a Safawi or a Arif can do. But every team needs a player such as myself, you know, to be able to work hard and regain the ball for players that have quality like those players and can show off their skills and can change games. So for me, it wasn't about, you know, I've got to get back, tackle this guy, and then get forward and score a goal or create an assist. It was about just working hard, being in good position, being an option, being available to help those other players out. And I say to the boys at Selangor all the time, you know, it's so important to have your individual skill set, but at the same time, the hard work is, for me, the number one thing. If we all have hard work and we all work for each other and we all battle for each other, then your skills will be much more useful going forward. So, you know, that's one of the things that I try to instill in all the younger generation coming through, is that hard work has to come first. It has to. And then we can fine tune the skills, fine tune their tactical knowledge, and give them the ability to further their career, hopefully past Malaysia as well and into other continents around the world. So that game, I guess, epitomized my thoughts on myself and football, and it was such a great night.
It is shown. And now you have spoken about what did you speak about with the younger ones in your team. Obviously, we know that you are the captain of this Selangor team. We just want to know, you're, whether you want it or not, now you are more experienced and you are seen as some sort of a leader
Seen as
in a team.
what's the word for it?
Supremo,
No, you're seen as a elder statesman.
elder statesmen of the team, the MP of the team. Um, I mean, in terms of leadership, how do you see yourself? Are you the kind of leader that always vocal about things that they do, things that they don't do, or you just quietly lead by example? What kind of leader are you?
Yeah, I think it was quite funny because Taylor Regan was the captain here before, and I think everyone knows him.
Funny guy.
I think everyone can hear him from anywhere across the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's big shoes to fill coming to Selangor, but I learned a lot from him, and I learned that you don't always have to be that huge voice. Although I like to be that voice on the field, and I like to be loud, and I like to be inspiring, and I like to
Rally people on.
exactly get people to do their job to the best of their ability. But at the same time, I've always been that player to lead by example, and I think that's probably been my one characteristic that I would say that would make me a leader in whatnot, and constantly pushing people to do better, and constantly pushing myself to do better, I think has been the one thing, as I say, I give to these boys. And a lot of them have come up to me and asked for advice, and a lot of the time it really comes back to work hard, work harder than you think that you can do, and push yourself, because once you crack that code to be able to push more, then you will unlock so many more attributes that you didn't know that you had. And a lot of these boys, you can see now, the young ones coming through, are slowly unlocking those attributes and are slowly tapping into different aspects that they never thought that they had. So it's a great thing to see, the evolution of these players. It's really amazing to see them come along, and we've got an amazing squad. We've got an amazing Selangor 2 squad here, and just hopefully that the one thing that I can leave with them is something of working hard and unlocking those characteristics.